You wake up at 3 a.m. with a sudden, suffocating panic. Your youth is officially slipping through your fingers. You stare at the ceiling, calculating your remaining mortgage payments, counting your new gray hairs, and wondering if this exhausting daily routine is all that your life will ever be. You are trapped in a classic painful midlife crisis. But why did your prehistoric ancestors never experience this existential meltdown? For 99% of human history, this psychological collapse simply did not exist. In fact, if you could travel back 40,000 years into the Pleistocene Ice Age and tell a nomadic hunter-gatherer that you were having an identity crisis because you turned 40, they would stare at you in complete blanks. They would not just find your panic strange, they literally would not possess the cultural or linguistic concepts to understand what you were mourning. Modern society tells us that a midlife crisis is a natural biological milestone of aging. We treat it like an inevitable software update that glitches our brains when we hit our fourth decade on Earth. We assume it is the natural human reaction to realizing our bodies are slowing down and our time is running out. But science tells a completely different story. In 1965, a Canadian psychoanalyst named Dr. Elliot Jacques officially coined the term midlife crisis after studying the biographies of famous artists who experienced a sudden drop in productivity or a radical shift in style around age 38. He realized this panic was not a timeless human trait, but a highly specific byproduct of industrialized modern economic structures that force individuals to measure their worth by linear productivity. Your ancient ancestors did not have sports cars to buy, corporate ladders to fall off of, or isolated suburban homes to feel lonely in. Their minds were tuned to a fundamentally different frequency of existence. To understand why your brain panics today, you first have to unlearn a massive historical lie about how long humans used to live. You have probably heard the common statistic that ancient humans had an average life expectancy of only 30 years. You might assume they never had a midlife crisis simply because they were already dead before they could reach middle age. But this is a complete mathematical misunderstanding of evolutionary data. In a landmark 2007 anthropological study published by scientists Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan, researchers analyzed longevity data across multiple surviving hunter-gatherer tribes across the globe. They discovered that while childhood mortality was incredibly high due to infections and accidents, any individual who managed to survive past the age of 15 routinely lived well into their late 60s, 70s, and even 80s. Your ancestors absolutely experienced middle age, gray hair, wrinkling skin, and declining physical speed. They watched their bodies change just like you do. Why then did they remain completely immune to the existential dread that paralyzes you today? The answer lies in the brutal reality of the modern purpose trap. Today, you are burdened with the agonizing weight of infinite choice. You can choose your career, your partner, your religion, your lifestyle, and your geographic home. When you hit 40, you naturally look backward at all the roads you did not take, mourning the alternate versions of yourself that died because you chose a specific desk job. Your ancestors never suffered from this paralyzing paradox of choice. Their daily purpose was hard-coded directly into their biology by the unyielding demands of immediate survival. A 40-year-old Pleistocene hunter did not wake up, wondering if they should have pursued a career in graphic design instead of tracking woolly mammoths. They did not experience a crisis of identity because their identity was entirely inseparable from the survival of their immediate clan. Every single morning brought an undeniable visceral mission. Find clean water, secure high-calorie food, keep the fire burning, and protect the children from predators. True existential boredom requires a level of artificial comfort that our biology never evolved to handle. Is it possible that our modern psychological suffering is simply the price we pay for removing physical danger from our lives? Furthermore, your ancestors viewed the physical process of aging through an entirely different evolutionary lens. In modern society, aging is treated as a tragic, slow slide into economic irrelevance. Once your physical beauty fades or your productivity slows down, the modern world gently pushes you to the margins of society. In the prehistoric wilderness, an aging body was not a liability. It was the ultimate tribal asset. To understand why, we have to look at one of the greatest anomalies in evolutionary biology: human menopause. Human females are one of the only mammalian species on Earth that live for decades after they stop being able to reproduce. In 1997, anthropologist Dr. Kristen Hawkes developed the grandmother hypothesis to explain this evolutionary mystery. By studying the Hadza hunter-gatherers of Tanzania, she proved that post-reproductive grandmothers were the absolute secret weapon of human survival. Because these older women were no longer burdened by nursing their own infants, they could forage for high-quality root vegetables more efficiently than anyone else, directly keeping the tribe's children alive during brutal droughts. An aging ancestor did not look in a mirror and see a decaying worker. They looked in a mirror and saw a walking biological database. They were the ones who remembered which toxic plants became edible during rare famines. They were the ones who knew how to navigate through a trackless desert to find hidden water holes during a once-in-a-generation ecological collapse. They did not have Google, Wikipedia, or library archives. They had their elders. Your wrinkles were not a sign of expiration. They were your credentials. How could you experience an identity crisis when your growing wrinkles made you more respected, more protected, and more essential to your community than you had ever been in your youth? There is another massive psychological barrier that protected your ancestors from midlife panic: the absence of linear time. Modern humans live inside a crushing, artificial construct known as mechanical time. We divide our existence into precise ticking segments: seconds, hours, fiscal quarters, 5-year career plans, and retirement ages. You look at your life as an arrow flying along a straight, desperate line from birth to the grave. When you hit 40, you look at the clock of linear time and realize the arrow has passed its peak and is now plummeting toward the dirt. Your ancestors did not live on an arrow. They lived inside a giant, beautiful circle. They experienced time through cyclical rhythms: the migration patterns of birds, the waxing and waning of the moon, the freezing and thawing of the earth, and the endless loop of birth, parenting, and passing down wisdom. There was no artificial milestone called retirement, because there was no artificial concept called a career. You did not abruptly stop working at 65 to sit in an empty room. You merely shifted your tasks from high adrenaline hunting to low-impact tool-making, storytelling, and child-rearing. You remained embedded in the circle until your very last breath. Why should a circle have a midlife crisis? The existential panic you feel today is not a sign that your brain is broken. It is a sign that your brain is working perfectly, but it is trapped inside a world it was never designed for. Your midlife crisis is actually a silent protest from your prehistoric biology. It is your inner hunter-gatherer screaming out against the isolation of suburban life, the meaningless repetition of digital paperwork, and the terrifying illusion that you are aging entirely alone. Tonight, when you stare at the ceiling and feel that familiar wave of anxiety about your age, listen closely to what that panic is trying to tell you. Your ancient genes do not care about your bank account or your job title. They are simply mourning the loss of the tribe, the fire, and the deep, uncomplicated certainty of knowing exactly why you are alive. You do not need a new car or a radical lifestyle escape to fix your mind. You simply need to find your way back to a life where your presence matters to the people around you every single day.